Katie, thank you very much for that rousing address. Katie is willing to take one or two questions, and I just wanted to flag to people there may be the opportunity to put in questions. I'm reliant on a team of one or two roving mics, and as I learned at conference last year, it's not easy to see out from this stage with the brightness of the lights, so we will see if that comes off. I just wanted, before we took questions though, just to make a couple of comments about what we've heard from Katie. UKIP stood on a manifesto at the last election of supporting a fairer, proportional system of voting which retained a constituency link, and that's something we support strongly. Katie has put forward a popular and I think well-entrenched system elsewhere of proportional representation called single transferable vote, which certainly meets the criteria that UKIP has set for an electoral system we would want to support. I myself have some personal sympathy for single transferable vote, as my grandfather was elected as an Irish member of Parliament for the Fianna Fáil party under STV. And as Katie says, it's certainly a system that would lead to greater fairness and probably representation of at least 40, perhaps 50 MPs for UKIP in Parliament. I do also want to highlight that there are other systems out there, and I think it's very important that we row in behind a proportional system with a constituency link, whatever that is, that could find widespread support, and I think that may be STV, but I think it's important we also keep open the option of other possibilities in case they were to develop momentum. And I would just like this morning just to highlight one of those to you, because something I try and do as Director of Policy Development for UKIP is to consult with members, and I have hundreds of people write into me with policy ideas. I try to reply, and when I have good ideas I try and showcase them. And we have one particular activist, Captain Graham Harper, who's put in an extraordinary amount of work for the party generally, but also to promote policy ideas. And one of those has been from a friend of his called Peter Scott, who's developed and extols a model he describes as combined representation. I have here what he's done to put this forward. I think a number of people in the party have been sent one by Peter, who is a great promoter for his work. And we'll be publishing his scheme, which I think is similar to another one called Total Representation, or at least there's some crossover between them. We'll be publishing that on our website just as another example of an electoral system that would meet our goals, but support what Katie has said this morning as STV being a good system to do that. And I'm doing a lot of work currently on the Welsh Assembly elections and preparing a manifesto for those. And one of our policies is to elect the local health boards that are in charge of the NHS there. And with around 5 or 6 non-executive members, STV is a system we're looking at to promote for that particular role. I think it's really important about electoral systems to understand not just what they do in terms of how proportional they are, but also what they do to where they put power within and between parties. And I think it is really important that electoral representatives should be able to represent their constituents who elect them, rather than always looking over their shoulders to party whips or hierarchies. And before I joined this party, I was able to achieve some things in Parliament as a Conservative, but I almost always did them against the party whip rather than with the party whip, and including a vote to including being one of 81 who voted for a referendum on our membership of the European Union when David Cameron was saying he was against it. And then later with 53 who supported a motion I actually put to the House of Commons that there should be a cut in the European Union budget, just as in local government we were facing cuts, and I was pleased we won that against the whip. Members of Parliament, members of assemblies, members of local councils are only really able to do those independent initiatives if they have a certain security and they can keep the people who elect them happy and do what they want rather than looking always to the party whips and party hierarchy. And I think STV, the other system I mentioned, and a number of others, it's really important to see that they entrench the power of local independent representatives to do the right thing for the people who elect them, and that's something we should always look at about electoral representation as well. If we do have one or two roving mics, we have about sort of 5 minutes spare if there are one or two questions from the floor to Katie or to myself around electoral reform. Sir.
Hi Katie, thanks for your presentation. I come from a town called Hetman-Wyke in West Yorkshire, and Hetman-Wyke elects 3 councillors to Kirklees Council. All 3 of those councillors represent the Labour Party, and the Labour Party don't even enjoy 2/3 of the vote in Hetman-Wyke. I was wondering if any research had been done into how the makeup of local authorities would be affected if they were elected under STV instead of first past the post.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Yes, there is some new research, hot off the press, by somebody called Lewis Baston, who's just completed a piece of research for an organisation called, or a sort of campaigns outfit called Make Votes Count. And I've been speaking at a couple of meetings about that at other conferences, so I'd be really delighted to share that with you. It goes into quite a lot of detail. We need to be a bit careful, don't we? It's quite hard to sort of do the sort of crystal ball gazing, because of course when you introduce a new system we don't know how voters are going to behave, which is part of the beauty of it, putting more power in their hands. But I'd be delighted to share that research with you and anyone else as well. It goes into quite some detail, and probably even possibly down to the level of detail of your own area as well, so perhaps we could have a look at that.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Hi, I'm Kane. I'd like to ask Katie about does the Electoral Reform Society support Votes at 16, seeing as it is our future as well as everyone else's in, the votes and stuff like that, because it will be us who is going to, take the mess of what this government is doing and what the votes of many of our parents and grandparents might choose to do. So it's us who have to clean up the mess in the end. Does the Reform Society support that?
Thank you to one of our younger members. Katie, does the ERS have a position on Votes at 16?
Yes, the Electoral Reform Society is a long-term supporter of Votes at 16. We believe that it's a policy that should be introduced alongside, this is really important, really good education, so that when younger people are going to the polls for the first time, they've actually had that really good neutral education. And also we want measures to encourage registration. If we're going to move towards extending the franchise, then it's going to be really important for those younger voters to be registered. So absolutely, there needs to be a package of education, registration and extending the franchise.
Thank you. And perhaps if we could take one or two questions from this side of the hall. Towards the back there, thank you.
Good morning, I'm David Meacock. Local councillors will know that much of their duties are actually in fulfilment of statutory requirements. Do you think that the fact that a local election without any other national election only typically will attract 20% of the vote means that in fact the public have seen through this and realise that so-called local elections aren't really local elections because councillors have so little local discretion? What does that say about democracy locally?
I think it says an awful lot, not just about what's happened to local democracy in this country, but what's happened to democracy as a whole. And I think it's incredibly important, and one of the things that attracted me, and I believe Douglas, to this party was UKIP's focus on direct democracy and devolving power down. And when I speak to people in Wales about the assembly elections there, I say the point of devolution isn't just to devolve power to the Cardiff Bay establishment. It should be to actually devolve power further down where possible to local authorities and to local communities. And I think it really is very poor for our democracy when you elect people but then require them to do something determined by other people and then blame them when what they do isn't popular. And I think the way we deal with that is we devolve more power, more finance raising to local authorities and then encourage the quality councillors to come forward to actually make use of that power. And democracy only works, I think, when you really push it down as far as you can and then empower the people to deliver to serve those they represent. At the moment, that's not the case, and part of what UKIP is about is as a party to reform that and make democracy work. And I think perhaps if we can take one final question. Good. We have a gentleman back there on the left, just beyond the middle of the hall.
Good morning. Is that working? Yeah. You gave an illustration of an STD reallocation of votes.
I think STV, STV. V for vote. Not D.
And it obviously means that the votes of unsuccessful and, more importantly, successful candidates are reallocated. But who chooses which votes are reallocated? And I believe that could create the opportunity for corruption in some local authorities that are very heavily dominated by one party at present.
And thanks very much for your question. I mean, I think the simple answer is that it's the voter under the single transferable vote system who chooses where their preferences go. So it's actually putting power into the hands of the voter. The voter puts a number one by the person they most want, a number two by their second preference, and so on. So it's a really powerful system, I think, for putting vote power in the hands of the voter rather than in the hands of any one party.
Thank you, Katie. And if people are worried about the slowness of counting in some local authorities, and Medway and Thanet come to mind at the general election, where I think our results are at 8 or 9 in the morning, and I've been in politics there. It's got slower and slower each time. I think one option for local authorities might look at outsourcing their county papers, perhaps to a trusted organisation like the Electoral Reform Services. Now, Katie, thank you very much for your contribution.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.